Hello and welcome aboard another episode of the Gallant Says podcast, live at youtube.com/Paul Gallant and twitch.tv/Gallant Says Sunday through Thursday night. It's also available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. We are recording this at 10:41 Central Time on Monday, October 30th of 2023. Just watched another week of NFL action wrap up. My God, there are some bad quarterbacks across the NFL, to the point where we're looking at Jared Goff as one of the better ones. And on the other sideline, we are seeing Jimmy Garoppolo not be the guy that I thought a long time ago that he could be, should someone bring him in from that brief time where he subbed in for relief duty of Tom Brady. Yikes. But I mean, that wasn't even the worst quarterback performance of the week. I mean, just off the top of your head, you had Tommy DeVito actually in a game in that Giants-Jets game. Zach Wilson, more of him. You had Kenny Pickett. You had Desmond Ridder. Makes you feel pretty good about the Texans having C.J. Stroud. The Titans, if there's any Titans fans jumping in, having Will Levis, Gardner Minshew. Who's that kid on the Browns? P.J. Walker, but it was Dorian Thompson-Robinson for a little bit too. You had Josh Dobbs again. Possibly concussed Brock Purdy, Tyson Bagent. I mean, yikes. Anyway, that game's done, and to continue what's been a miserable last couple of days in the Houston sports world, outside of if you're a Houston Dynamo fan, the Rockets are 0-3. The young players don't seem to be making progress. The Astros are out of the playoffs. The Rangers have a 2-1 lead in the World Series. Oh, it's not great. So to throw a little more gasoline on top of all of this, the Titans, who just beat the Atlanta Falcons, a team that the Texans lost to, while wearing Houston Oilers uniforms. Will Levis, who they took in the second round, his first ever start, throws 4 touchdown passes, 3 to DeAndre Hopkins. That sucked, seeing DeAndre Hopkins find the fountain of youth while wearing a Houston sports jersey. And those Oilers jerseys look good. If you have paid attention to me long enough, you'd know that it sucks, in my opinion, that the Titans hold the rights to those jerseys when they only played as the Houston Oilers for a couple of years, 2 years, before abandoning the nickname as part of one of the more horribly executed relocations by an NFL or any American sports franchise that you'll ever see. They changed their name to the Titans in 1999. They go to the Super Bowl in 1999. And for a while, you didn't really see much Houston Oilers merchandise, and especially not uniforms, outside of that 1 year when every single old AFL team started wearing their American Football League throwbacks. So they were wearing those light blue helmets, not the stuff that we saw during the Love You Blue era, not what we saw with Warren Moon in the run and shoot. So here's why the Tennessee Titans versus the city of Houston is back in the news today. It has to do with something that the University of Houston Cougars did. The NFL's merchandising and licensing division sent a cease and desist letter to the University of Houston demanding it halt any further use of the uniforms that they wore September 2nd. Columbia blue uniforms with a white Houston script across the front outlined in red. similar to the jerseys worn by the Houston Oilers during, as this ESPN article writes, their Love Ya Blue era. The university was careful to say their uniforms were a tribute to H-Town pride and a nod to the city's fondness for the Oilers. Per the Chronicle, I believe Joseph Duarte has the full story. The letter said UH's blatant copying of the Oilers jerseys was grounds for legal action, and it demanded that the university discontinue any sales of merchandise and remove any promotional or social media posts that feature the imagery. This isn't the Titans suing the University of Houston. This is the NFL being the mom, being the Karen, while the Titans sit in the background, 5 years old in the car seat, hoping that mom's going to take care of business. And that's tough for anyone to fight up against. Is it worth the University of Houston's time, especially when they haven't been merchandising or selling these uniforms? Probably not. Bonnie L. Jarrett, in an October 13th letter, had this to say of what Houston was trying to do. The Houston Cougars' attempt to free ride on the popularity of the NFL and the club violates the intellectual property rights of the NFL and the Titans. The letter said the Oilers' design is among the most famous and valuable NFL marks. Well, it's valuable for the Titans because they don't really have a lot going for them, if we're being perfectly honest. The letter, according to the Chronicle, said the NFL and the Titans were disappointed to learn that the Houston Cougars made unauthorized use of the Oilers' trade dress in a manner that is likely to cause consumers to believe that the Houston Cougars are associated with or are an authorized licensee of the NFL and the Titans. Okay, no one in the right mind is going to fucking think that, but if this is something that goes to court, this is about the judge. This isn't about people living in Houston. So it's a shame. I was hoping that they would actually sell those jerseys. I wanted to buy one of those jerseys. Alas, that's not going to happen. Let's read a couple of comments first. Not a Doctor says, that was quite the jump scare. Is that me being dressed up as Draco Malfoy? Lance K asks a great question. Why didn't Houston sue for the rights of the Oilers instead of just releasing them from the lease 2 years early? And he continues saying, what's hilarious is that Bud Adams didn't want to change the name. The NFL came to Bud with the idea of retiring the Oilers name. If he agreed to rebrand, it was the NFL's idea. It actually was also due to the pressure that Adams faced. We'll get to that in a moment, because I want to get to the first thing that you asked about. There is faults on both sides here. The city of Houston should have done something that I know about because of my 2 years up in Seattle. For those who don't know, the Seattle Supersonics of the NBA moved to Oklahoma City. They're the Oklahoma City Thunder. But you'll notice that the Thunder have never worn Seattle Sonics throwbacks, not once. That's because the city sued to keep the history and to keep the uniforms for whenever a basketball team eventually comes back to Seattle, which does seem to be right around the corner. And I think the city of Houston did not sue Bud Adams and the Oilers here. Based off of what I read, because I obviously was not here during the time, I think they were just so fucking done with Bud Adams. They just wanted him gone. And no matter how much the people with the power to sue may have hated Bud Adams, they should have done it. It's a cool nickname. It's cool uniforms. There's some history. So a little bit of blame goes to Houston. However, Bud Adams, timing, not his forte in any of this relocation. He only wanted to pay 25% of the cost of a new stadium right after renovations. And the way that he handled the move of the organization was an absolute disaster. There's a Reddit post by Artel's 2023 about 9 months ago. I think it's a pretty good recap. Oilers owner Bud Adams had secured some renovations to the Astrodome in the 1980s, but he soon threatened to leave Houston unless the Oilers got a brand new arena, which he would only pay for 25% of. Giving so much money to the Oilers so soon after the renovations was politically unpopular in Houston, so the city government refused to give Adams what he wanted. Adams then came to an agreement with the city of Nashville to move the team there and build a new stadium for them with significant public funds. So he announced that they would be moving for the 1998 season, right before the start of the 1996 season. Why would anyone go to a game in 1996 knowing that the team's about to leave? So he moved them a year early, but the stadium they were trying to build in Nashville wasn't going to be ready until 1999. So in 97, they played in Memphis at the Liberty Bowl, but Memphis is kind of far from Nashville. If I'm not mistaken, Memphis, I want to say it's like a 6-hour to drive. Like it's very far. Oh, no, it's not that bad, actually. 3 hours and 13 minutes. Well, I don't know much about Tennessee geography. Any Titans fans who might be in here, apologies, guys. I let you down. But continuing to read this write-up, in 1998, Adams moved the team to Vanderbilt. But the Oilers' nickname and this, I think, desire in Nashville to have something that was more Tennessee themed like that clearly hurt them when they first moved. So they're like, okay, well, we're going to do something new. And they're very lucky that in the first year of being the Titans in 1999 in the new stadium, that they made it all the way to the Super Bowl, where they ended up being a yard short, because it did, I think, give Nashville some actual interest in the Titans, but I do think that interest has waned over the years. So there's some faults on both sides here as far as why the Oilers colors are no longer in Houston. I do think it's important to bring up that Houston possibly could have fought to keep it. They didn't. Bud Adams seems like he was a vindictive asshole. And that has lent itself to the next generation of this, because Amy Adams Strunk, his daughter, now owns the team. And I can understand somebody being petty when a city hates your father. You would probably want to flick that city off in the same way that Bud Adams famously did that once. Word Deuce, I'll get to your question about Bobby Slowik a little bit later here. The Titans are being a petty, small-time mom-and-pop shop with this entire thing with the University of Houston. Because, as I said before, no one is confused here. No one thinks that this college football team is somehow a part of the Tennessee Titans. And Houston does have a baby blue color among their colors for the program. It's not one that's prominently used. It's mostly red and white, but they do have, I think, a light blue there. This feels like it's being done once again, this season desist, just to flick off the city of Houston. But it's also being done for financial reasons, because this is, as I said, a mom and pop kind of shop. Look at what they've been doing over the last calendar year. Yes, we've got these awesome Houston Oilers uniforms and logos that we have not been rolling out for a while. But we're trying to trade away our best players. You see the Derrick Henry attempted trade with Baltimore. Kevin Byard just got traded to the Eagles. They traded A.J. Brown not too long ago. They have been begging the city of Nashville for a publicly financed stadium. that would also allow them to make money off of the many concerts that take place in Nashville. I mean, it's a smart business decision, but they're still nickeling and diming Nashville in the same way that they were nickeling and diming the city of Houston. And when you own an NFL team, it's a constantly appreciating asset. It just continues to increase in value no matter how fucking bad you are at owning it. Take a look at Daniel Snyder and how the Washington football team was for a long time the most valuable organization in the NFL. Then a couple of decades of Dan Snyder and that stadium falling apart put them back down closer to the middle of the pack. Here's why I get why Tennessee is nickeling and diming here and trying to defend it. Everyone agrees that Oilers is a better nickname than Titans. Everyone agrees. Everyone agrees that the Oilers' uniforms are cooler than the ones that the Titans are wearing. I actually like the Titans uniforms that they rolled out in 1999. I actually did. Thought they looked different. The ones that they rolled out a couple of years ago look like absolute dog shit. And they don't go back to those ones that they had the one time that they did make it to the Super Bowl, when they had Steve McNair, when they had Eddie George, among other good players. And this thing that they abandoned because of the lack of support in Tennessee when they moved there, it's legitimately the one cool piece of IP that they have. The one, whoa, this is great intellectual property that this organization has. And that's why the NFL is getting involved, because it's theirs too. And I think that they realize that the Titans don't really have a lot of value big picture unless they somehow stumble their way into a great quarterback. Maybe Will Levis ends up being that guy and win a bunch of games in the near future. They play in SEC territory. That team has not been embraced in the same way that the crazy people that live in that state still love the Tennessee Volunteers, who have also been very disappointing since the late 90s, the Peyton Manning, Philip Fulmer era. They've been awful for a while, at least compared to expectations. Like Hendon Hooker last year with Tennessee is the first time in a long time that they'd actually looked like a relevant program. So this is a largely forgettable franchise that, as I just said, has struggled to make a region of college football fans care about them. They're a franchise that has had recognizable names wearing those very cool uniforms of theirs: Earl Campbell, Warren Moon, Bruce Matthews, a limited time Steve McNair, Eddie George, but with little to no success on the field in those uniforms, and probably little to no success on the level that Mike Vrabel wants in the near future, especially seeing as they're stripping parts the fact that they have the one Super Bowl appearance, the one seed in the playoffs 3 times, and one and done every year since moving to Tennessee. Honestly, just the 2 AFC Championship appearances as the Houston Oilers in 78 and 79. Like, all they have are the cool uniforms. So they do have the right to do this legally, but they look like an ass. And hypocrisy is everywhere. You could call out hypocrisy. It doesn't stop the hypocrisy from happening, because generally the person who's being a hypocrite is just going to ignore being called out. That's all you can really do. But the NFL has had a lot of moments where they have not cared about intellectual property in the same way that they are fighting so hard to stop anything, especially in Houston, that looks like what the Houston Oilers used to wear. For example, 1979, the Pittsburgh Steelers were really good. Obviously, they beat the Oilers in the 1979 AFC Championship game. So Iowa coach Hayden Fry asked the Steelers if he could make Iowa's uniforms look like Pittsburgh's. Their color scheme was always black and yellow, but they had a yellow helmet. They moved to the black helmet from there on out. So they asked Iowa did. The Steelers for permission. The Steelers granted it. Well, the Steelers took their logo directly from the American Iron and Steel Institute. More teams with either tolerance for others that are mimicking their look. The Green Bay Packers G came into existence in 1961. Georgia, after. Grambling State, after. You don't see the Packers fighting over it. Packers are a small town franchise that's collectively owned. Why not go after Georgia right now? I mean, shit, the Packers are bad all of a sudden. Georgia's the best thing going. Why not? If you're a petty dick, you could. The LA Rams were the first team with a horn on the side of their helmet in the 1940s. Colorado State followed suit almost exactly in 1973. You don't see the Rams taking issue with that. Now, different colors maybe. Same with different colors for the Packers in Georgia and with Grambling. Grambling's a little bit closer. I think there's a gold in there. The Chargers lightning bolt, get this, actually was stolen from the Air Force Academy because their first equipment manager had been at the Air Force Academy. If you remember, back when the Chargers came into existence, they were originally called the Chargers because they were trying to make credit cards a thing. Like the team nickname was supposed to help popularize credit cards. And also, not too long ago, you saw Memphis copy the Cincinnati Bengals helmets, that pattern, that tiger stripe pattern that they have. So this has been happening before. But the only team, the only organization that the NFL has said we're going to stop this for has been the Houston Oilers, who no longer exist. They did it with the Houston Cougars, and they did it with a significantly less identical Houston Roughnecks logo in the XFL. They filed a claim on December 28th of 2021 because the oil derrick on the Oilers logo and the oil derrick on the Roughnecks logo were very similar. Now, they haven't done this against Rice, who also wore Columbia blue uniform September 30th. Maybe that's going to happen as well. But the Titans/Oilers are really the only team that's ever flipped a tit over somebody wearing something that looks like their uniforms. And it's a bad look. It makes them look like pores. But hey, in that Reddit post that I read, the guy who wrote it argued that had the Oilers stayed in Houston and gotten a new stadium, that they would probably be worth as much as the Texans are now, which is to say about $1 billion more. Now, I don't know all the numbers and books that went into that. I'm guessing that's just an estimation. Had the city kept the team and built a new stadium, that, yeah, the team would have gone up in value because that's just the way that things go in the NFL. But there is a massive chasm in terms of franchise value between the Texans, who I think are top 5, and the Titans, who I think are in the bottom half of the league. That's why you see them moving on from A.J. Brown. That's why you see them moving on from Kevin Byard. Why you see them moving on possibly from Derrick Henry. We'll see if that happens by tomorrow's trade deadline. Where do I fit in all of this? I'm not from Houston originally. This is where I take issue because I've actually met and gotten to know some of the guys who played for those Oilers teams over my time here in Houston. Dan Pastorini in particular, Robert Brazil, among others. And they've always been very polite when asked about the fact that they can't be honored in Houston, and they're almost always deferential to Amy Adams Strunk. To her credit, Strunk has done a good job of honoring ex-Oilers players in Nashville. Billy White Shoes Johnson this past Sunday was worship. But when you bring it in with the pettiness that we discussed before, it doesn't look as good. Like, she has these players travel all the way up to Nashville to be honored by people who never saw them play and people who don't know a damn thing about them. And that part, I think, is the worst. Those players deserve to be honored in Houston by the people who actually watch them play and have memories of them. And, okay, maybe the Titans aren't going to give up the Oilers' intellectual property, but give up the history at the very least is all I've been pushing for. For those players, because that's who this should be for. And obviously, I'm looking at this perhaps in a naive manner, but the Titans have been in Tennessee for nearly 25 years. They have established their own history along the way. Do they need to cling to the Oilers' history? They don't. They're just clinging to the uniforms, which are still a hot item in the city of Houston. It helps them get some extra merchandise, and considering it's an organization that doesn't make a whole lot of money, they need it wherever they can get it. It still sucks, and they are 100% being dicks here. But they're legally allowed to do it, and it fucking sucks. Anyway, youtube.com/Paul Gallant is how you can interact with the show live. You can also join twitch.tv/Gallant Says. Tim McRory comments, youtube.com/Paul Gallant. I grew up an Oiler fan, so I know. Bud Adams, those uniforms are Houston's uniforms. There's some typos along the way. I think he's trying to say Tennessee sucks. They do not have the honor of wearing gray uniforms like the Houston ones. Word Dude's comments, I have a sneaking suspicion the curtains don't match the carpet here. NJ's Fuentes Respecter says there's nothing to talk about anymore. You don't want to talk about a piping hot Houston Texans take I have? Word Deuce asks, what do you think happens with the running game going forward? Will Bobby Slowik run less and focus more on passing, or just try to continue to force it? We need to all have an intervention when it comes to all things Bobby Slowik related. On Friday, y'all thought that Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowik was the best, especially when you heard Laramie Tunsil describe him as a mastermind. I saw people sarcastically saying online, Bobby Slowik sucks as offensive coordinator. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And now, a couple of days later, after C.J. Stroud says he wants things to be more explosive, that he wants to push the football down the field a little bit more, y'all hate him. And I get it. There's been two shitty offensive performances in a row by the Texans. I understand it from that perspective. But I'm also looking at this through a much more relaxed prism. You got to realize there are limitations that this offense is working with right now. No Robert Woods, it hurts this team. It does. The offensive line, it's not good. Have you watched Titus Howard try to do a pull block? He fucked up on 2 of those on Sunday. The Texans running backs made things happen on their own. Juking, putting their shoulder into guys. I thought that Dameon Pierce, Devin Singletary, Mike Boone, I thought they all made some nice plays on Sunday in spite of an offensive line that did a very poor job on the ground paving holes for them. And I get that some people are frustrated with the amount of times that the Texans are running the football as opposed to passing it. But as somebody who has worked in a city where a quarterback was pushing for things to be more explosive, was pushing to throw the football down the field more, and at times was outright ignoring what his offensive play callers were telling him to do, Russell Wilson is who I'm talking about. With the benefit of hindsight, was trying to be more explosive in the best interest of the Seattle Seahawks, especially with where things have gone over the last couple of years for Russell Wilson, who went to Denver with the idea that that's what was going to happen there. They were going to be explosive. They were going to push the football down the field. Russell Wilson's really good at putting the football down the field. And I would like to see them push it down the field a little bit more. Stroud only threw 2 passes that traveled 20 or more yards. Both were incomplete. There was also that other pass that got called back on the illegal man downfield by Shaq Mason, but 17 of his 24 passes traveled less than 10 yards. I get the frustration with this dinking and dunking. And Stroud, you could hear it from him. He said he wasn't criticizing Bobby Slowik, but I mean, it really sounded like he was doing everything but criticizing Bobby Slowik. He doesn't like what the offense has been doing, but I think there's just been way too many simplistic takes on what the Texans should do coming out of it. Kesix on Reddit Texans said, "We did not blow out other teams by running the football. I don't know what's going through this dickhead," talking about Bobby Slowik's mind. I didn't say that. "That makes him feel obligated to run the football over and over again. It's getting worse as the season progresses. We haven't won," all caps, "the games we won because we ran the football well. We passed the football well. You were a passing game coordinator. You don't know jack about rushing it. Stick to what sticks. Running does not stick. Passing sticks. It always has." Well, what if it doesn't? When teams are throwing a ton of guys back in coverage like they are against CJ Stroud, you should try to run the football because it means that there's not going to be as many guys in the box. I get it. You don't want to run the football every single play. You're looking at this like through the same perspective that you looked at the way that Bill O'Brien operated the Texans running game, which he used essentially as a battering ram whenever he described it. That's what it is. But I just think this is a very simplistic way of looking at football. You don't just pass it every single down. This isn't fucking Madden. I'm sorry to be patronizing and talk down to you here, but another take by one of my favorite Texans follows. Nick Schwager. "Obviously, the game plan from week to week is different, but the Texans' offense is at its best when they don't play conservative and let Stroud go to work. It's that simple." That got 445 likes. Jesus Christ. Guys, that's not how football works. This is not how it works. You do have to balance throwing the ball with running the ball so that your offensive line is going to wear out the defensive line in front of you. If you're constantly dropping back, that offensive line is going to be tired by the end of the game. If you can't establish possessions as well, your defense is going to be tired by the end of the game. I know you don't like seeing them run the football, and I understand it. But you still have to. You can't just abandon it altogether. The problem is it's just not good enough for the Texans right now. But abandoning the run altogether and just throwing the football every single down. Well, what happens if the coverages that we've been seeing against Stroud and company continue? And if he wants to throw the football down the field, fine, but he also has to have the time to throw the football down the field. That is not a foregone conclusion behind this offensive line. So I get some of the frustration with Bobby Slowik, but I'm not saying everybody, a lot of fans need to take a chill pill here. This is a young and growing team, and you're expecting this to be the greatest show on turf when the leading receiver is Nico fucking Collins. No offense to Nico Collins, but what has he been up to this point in his career? Maybe you could use Tank Dell in some more ways that don't involve him running half the play, running 30 yards in motion before every single play. You know, more than 6 touches, okay. And maybe less motion. You don't get that delay of game on that 3rd and 5 at the Panthers 35 or whatever. But I think that some of you guys got to slow your roll when it comes to Bobby Slowik. All right, going to read some comments here. YouTube.com/Paul Gallant. Should we focus on offense or defense for trades? You're not making any trades. You don't have the money. Not enough cap space. That is partly due to Bill O'Brien and Jack Easterby. This is not on Nick Caserio, but they don't have a lot of cap space to make trades for. And who are you trading for? You have to, if you're going to trade for somebody, you better be getting like a steal of a deal. You're trading a 4th or a 5th round pick for a guy that's got a year and a half left on his contract or something like that. but you don't have the money to make that happen. Not a doctor. Jerry2968 says the interior line was awful in pass protection too. They were the reason for all the passes CJ had batted down. I don't agree with that. I thought Frankie Tutu played the game very well. If you watched, Tutu was sitting back and reading Stroud's eyes. He was not engaged on at least one of those deflected passes. I don't think that's accurate. They had a good game plan. They deserve credit for the good game plan. Doesn't mean that, Stroud doesn't deserve criticism for the performance, but that's not on the offensive lineman, all those deflected passes. John Marine comments, hello, happy Tuesday or Monday world. How can the Texans break through those cardboard cutouts? The Carolina Panthers call an offensive line, sacking him multiple times. Yep, 6 sacks, 9 tackles for a loss, and still lose. Well, he didn't score enough points. And my big issue, if you watch the live stream that I had on Sunday after the game, I don't understand why they didn't let Kaimi Fairbairn kick that field goal. It was in his range. They didn't kick it. I don't get it. Word deuce. That wasn't my take. I was asking what you thought the OC would do. Don't put that shit on me. Sorry, I'm generalizing people here. I've seen a lot of people online that are just criticizing Slowik. Jerry2968, even if it's not working, you have to do it just to keep the defense honest. If you don't, you will get your quarterback killed. And it also has to do with just making your offensive linemen happy. I know that's a weird thing to think about, but offensive linemen like to go forward. They don't like to go back. The Texans need to hire Jeff Luno. Honestly, it probably would work. Whatever that soccer organization he's with overseas seems to be going pretty well. John Marine, thank you for the follow on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Gallant says if you like the Twitch. I think I prefer YouTube. I definitely have way more of a following on YouTube than I do on Twitch. It's mainly because I get to post my radio shows afterwards. Tomorrow is going to be interesting, though. If you want to watch on the ESPN 97.5 Twitch, I have a even better costume than I have right now, which is Draco Malfoy. This wig is warm. Even though it's hot, or excuse me, even though it's cold outside, like I'm burning up right now. So that's gonna wrap it up. Look, the Titans are dicks, and relax when it comes to Bobby Slowik. We don't know what he is yet. He is learning as an offensive coordinator. This game is not a complete indictment on him. I thought Carolina did make some good plays in this game. Obviously, their secondary was a little bit banged up, so maybe you should have done a little bit more. Maybe you should have pushed the field. And Slowik does seem to be somebody who overcorrects. And we'll see if he overcorrects for this coming game against the Buccaneers on Sunday. That's going to wrap it up. I appreciate you tuning in. It'll be up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, and SoundCloud a little bit later. And we'll be back on tonight, probably around 6 o'clock, youtube.com/Paul Gallant, twitch.tv/Gallant says. We're on Sunday through Thursday nights. Until tomorrow, so long, farewell, and have yourselves a wonderful Monday night or Tuesday morning.